Wuchang Fallen Feathers was one of my most anticipated games of 2025, and that was right behind the first Berserker Kazan and looked similar to Black Myth Wukong and Wolong Fallen Dynasty. So my expectations, as you can imagine, were pretty high. Let's unpack my thoughts into a review of the game and find out if those expectations were met or they fell short of hitting the mark. Our story takes place in the land of Shu in the late Ming Dynasty. We play as Wuchang, a pirate warrior who awakens in a cave suffering from the disease that the rest of the land is suffering from called the feathering. Our protagonist has no memory of how she got there, which is a symptom of the feathering, and so we begin our journey to find out who we are, what happened to us, and how to stop the feathering so that we don't transform into grotesque monsters similar to the ones roaming the landscape. The story isn't presented as cryptically as FromSoft titles are, however, it is still the player's job to interpret the story along the way, but I would say it's presented similarly to Lies of P. Personally, for me, the story didn't quite interest me as much as other Souls-likes I've played, and as you guys know, I have probably played every Souls-like on the planet. So let's talk about gameplay because I've got a lot to say about this, and most likely it's the reason why you're watching this review. The combat in Wuchang centers around a mechanic called Skyborn Might and is basically another system in a Souls-like that rewards players for playing well. Skyborn Might can be awarded in many different ways, through attacking, through perfect dodging, through consumables, and plenty of other means. You then use Skyborn Might to perform weapon arts on your weapons, which the more stacks of Skyborn Might you have, the more damage potential you have to inflict. And you can also use Skyborn Might for your magic and feathering. Feathering is a separate type of magic in the game that is more effective on humanoids, basically. There are 5 different weapon classes and lots of very fun weapons to use, most of which were pre-order bonuses. Each weapon class has their own strengths and weaknesses. For instance, long swords can perform deflections and counterattacks, one-handed swords can passively generate Skyborn Might, and dual swords can clash with enemy attacks, which mitigate damage. In fact, dual swords are probably the most OP weapons in the game. There's a massive skill tree for character progression, and thus leaves room for tons of build diversity in the game. To deepen build diversity, there are 3 talisman slots on our character and 3 gem slots on each weapon that can be equipped for different effects. There are free unlimited respecs in the skill tree, and the extremely great thing about that is that this ties into your weapon upgrades as well. So in this game, you do not need to worry about wasting upgrade materials if you decide to switch to a different weapon part of the way through the game. I feel that Wuchang had some balance issues, which I discovered pretty early on in the game. There were a lot of dips and spikes in this regard in the game, and you'll definitely want to be a player who can adapt their playstyle easily because it's almost like the game forces you to change things up, especially during boss fights. You're probably saying, well, that doesn't seem bad if they're free unlimited respecs. And you would be right. However, after a while of resetting things and switching things back between your skills, weapons, talismans, and gems on your weapons, it gets a little old. I feel like to simplify things, they could have maybe set up a loadout save system similar to Wolong Fallen Dynasty, where you could just load up your battle set. There's plenty of nasty side effects in the game as well, which require you to change armor based on the situation as well. One thing I'll say also is the game is really cheeky and dirty with ambushes. Definitely a game high up on that list in that regard. Some Souls-likes get ambushes right and give you a laugh like, oh, okay, you got me, game. But the ambushes in Wuchang will straight up piss you off. At least some did for me. It honestly felt like the Lords of the Fallen in that sense. I remember that game giving me the same feeling. I do have to say that world design is pretty phenomenal. Wuchang presents some Dark Souls 1 level interconnectivity, which is great to see. Codex Lost is another game in recent memory with fantastic interconnectivity. The zones in Wuchang Fallen Feathers are pretty sizable and have plenty of ground to cover for explorations and tons of tucked away loot to gather. Speaking of loot, I felt like there were way too many consumables in the game. For instance, there are probably about 10 different consumables to heal your character. Souls-likes as of late seem to struggle with a balance of too much or too little loot, I have noticed. Sound design is good in the game. No single track or examples of sound effects blew me away in the game or anything. However, there is weight in the sound effects where you would expect to see them, such as in combat encounters. For example, backstabs and critical attacks are probably one of the most satisfying things to perform on an enemy in the game. Being an Unreal Engine 5 game, there's always uncertainty how the game will perform, and I know there were issues on PC. However, I personally had absolutely zero performance issues with Wuchang on PS5 in performance mode. Initially, I was wondering if I was going to continue the Let's Play series a couple times while I was playing the game because I wasn't in love with it right away. I began to enjoy the game later on, so it was definitely a slow burn for me, and I think this could be attributed to personal things I had going on in my life. But I am definitely glad I stuck with the game and pushed through. So going back to my statement at the beginning of the video, my expectations weren't exceeded for the game. They fell a little short, but still an enjoyable experience. Could things be tweaked? Yeah, absolutely. But all in all, I would give Wuchang an 8 out of 10. Now, does it fall into my top 10 Soulslikes? No, I don't think so, but it comes pretty close in my opinion. But that is going to do it for my thoughts and review of Wuchang Fallen Feathers, and I hope this helps you out on making a purchase decision. Personally, for me, if I was going to buy the game at this moment, I would wait for a sale and not buy it at full price, but that's just me. So what do you guys think? Do you guys agree with my review? Have you played the game yourself? What are your thoughts? I'd love to hear them down below in the comments. So hopefully you all enjoyed this video, and take care. We'll see you in the next one.